All right, technical session number 13, display devices. How do we get to see what our computer is thinking? Ramar, do you have a question, or are you just kind of hanging out like this?
I'm just testing out the hand raise mechanism.
Just out there? Okay, gotcha. It works. We're good. All right, next. We have, if it'll let me change, there we go. Monitors, all those fun kinds of stuff and the varying kinds you may come across in your time in IT. We're going to be able to describe the different types of displays and their respective characteristics, describe the purpose of projectors, the different settings of monitors and how to adapt them, identify the video ports and connectors that are utilized to connect monitors. The cables and connectors keep going, and identify common problems that come up with monitors. BSMs for this particular case, teamwork. As we often say, IT is a team sport. No one is an island in and of themselves. No one in IT knows everything. If they say they do, they are lying. They may know a great deal, but things change at a rapid pace and there is far too much for any one person to know. Also, personal responsibility, especially when dealing with customers and team members. If you say you're going to do something, you do it. If you fail to do it or make a mistake, own that mistake. Own the bad as well as the good with regards to your work. All right, display devices. Primary output for most computers. Unless by chance you still have an Altair sitting around, then you better be really good at punch cards. All right, it shows what is going on with the programs and the operating system in and of itself. Utilizes a video card or display adapter and handles this handles the communication between the CPU that's making all the algorithmic computations and the monitor itself that gives you the fun output. Different types of display technologies we will be going over during this particular technical session are CRT, LCD, LED, plasma, OLED, and projector. All right, CRT, very much a legacy technology. Cathode ray tube is what this stands for, CRT. If you've ever come across one of these or had to move one, you will probably never forget having to move it. They weigh a ton. They are extremely heavy. It utilizes a grid of red, green, and blue phosphorus in order to project that image onto the screen or monitor itself. With regards to CRTs, you need to be very careful in their disposal. You would want to get them to a proper recycling facility. They do have hazardous materials inside them like mercury, lead, things of that nature. Also, the capacitors inside it can hold a residual charge even after being unplugged for a very long period of time and can severely injure and or kill you. So you do not disassemble a CRT monitor. That is for an electrician or essentially an old television repair mechanic. That is it. It is much like a power supply in a computer. We do not open these. And if it has a broken glass on the front of it, that is considered a hazardous disposal. It cannot be recycled at that point. It must be disposed of properly.
Do you look to your local, how you call it? Like, I don't know how to say it. To find out how to dispose of it. I don't know, health place to find out how to dispose of it.
Yeah, I mean, they on the back of them, a lot of times they will have a phone number that you can call for proper disposal. You can call your local waste management office and they will tell you, is it broken or not broken? If it's not broken, yes, you can bring to us and we will dispose of it properly. There are a lot of places that will do electronics recycling. Best Buy, I believe, is one of them. You can take it to them and they will properly recycle it because they can get a lot of valuable minerals out of it, so long as it is not broken. If it is broken, it becomes a health hazard and they won't allow it to be dropped off at that point. At that point, you would need to communicate with Waste Management and see what they would have you do. They may give you another number to contact and say, hey, contact these people. They'll come and pick up the unit for you. All right. Next, LCD or liquid crystal display. Monitor composed of a large number of tiny crystal molecules called subpixels, arranged in rows and columns, making up a matrix. And between polarized filters, each group of 3 RGB, which is red, green, blue, subpixels forms a physical pixel. Currently, LCD monitors use a thin film transfer, or TFT, to control each colored dot, providing fast picture display, crisp definition, and pretty good color control. Now, there are 2 main types of LCD monitors. You have IPS and TN, or twisted pneumatic and in-plane switching. It is important to know the twisted pneumatic is preferred by gamers because it has the fastest response time. They consume more power and they are brighter, but they have a narrower field of view than the IPS themselves. IPS gives you truer to color images, so the image itself is crisper and nicer and, you know, has a better, you know, image in and of itself. It allows for a wider viewing angle. If you remember early iterations of flat screen TVs, if you were not right in front of it, if you started to move a little bit off to the side, it would start to black out part of the screen because you were, you know, outside of the viewing angle. If that was the case, you had a twisted pneumatic television at that time. So 2 basic types: in-plane switching, twisted pneumatic. Twisted pneumatics preferred by gamers. Yes, Luis.
Yeah, like the thing that I noticed is that when you have like a high resolution or something like a 1920 times 1080, it slows down the frames per second when you're doing gaming, and then when you lower the resolution, for some reason it boosts your frames per second. Is it because
Yep.
of the amount of power? The higher the resolution, the higher the power, and the lower the resolution?
Not necessarily, but we will get into that. It gets into your ability to refresh, your refresh rate and stuff like that. So for higher resolution, it's requiring more computations to take place. You lower that resolution, it doesn't have to do as much work to change each frame. So it's the detail allotted in each screen, not necessarily the power delivered for that refresh rate. Yes, Jimmy.
Is that a typo where it says they are brighter and consumer power? Is it consume less
Likely,
power?
you know, it's consume more power.
More power? Okay.
Yeah, consume more power.
Okay.
Yes, there are typos sprinkled throughout. Apologies, I didn't create the slides. And unfortunately, I'm not able to edit the slides that are already in existence. All right. LCD monitors, the components that are inside of it. LCDs themselves do not generate light. They require light to pass through the image so that you're able to see it on the other end. So they use 2 different types typically, but if it is specifically stated to be an LCD, they are using what's called a CCFL, or cold cathode fluorescent lamp. This is like a smaller version of those big long tube lamps that you would see in offices and schools and stores and stuff like that. They would have one of those essentially behind the LCD panel to light it up so that you can see the pictures and colors and images displayed upon it. Otherwise, they would be there, but they would be so dark, it'd be very hard to actually pick up on it. In order for this to work, CCFLs require alternating current to operate. So as we knew before, when we have the power supply going into the computer, that turns the alternating current to direct current, right? So that allows the internal components to operate. Well, within a CCFL, they do have some components that require that direct current. So the power supply does that conversion as well from AC to DC. But in order to get the CCFLs to work, they require AC. So at that point, we actually have to have an inverter in place that converts DC back to AC so that the CCFLs can actually light up. So that is how the backlight itself works behind an LCD screen. So you have your basic components, you have your logic board, which is going to create that image on the screen. You have your backlights, which are going to be powered by through the inverter to get the power, you know, for the light itself. And then you have direct current running everything else. Yes, Luis.
So you're telling me that the backlight helps like with the image of the monitor?
The brightness of the image.
Got you.
Because the LCDs themselves do not generate light. They're just creating an image on a crystal screen. So, I mean, if you did not have the back component on there and you actually put it in front of like a window or something like that, you could actually have the light coming through it and be able to see the image pretty clearly. But for it to be in a compact form where it is far more useful, they actually utilize backlights behind it. And then if you remember in the early iterations of LCD screens, you didn't really have true blacks. They were just like grays. They were like that light grays because you had that light bleed over into those other sections. It couldn't have that sharp contrast between lights and darks because of those backlights. That was when they were utilizing the CCFL bulbs. So we step up one level in technology and we go to LEDs, or light emitting diode. At this point, it is still an LCD monitor, but the backlight behind it, they started using a grid of LED diodes to light up the screen. This allowed to create greater contrast within different parts of the screen. They were able to reduce the thickness of the actual TVs themselves and also making them significantly lighter. They were able to get rid of the inverter because the LEDs themselves use direct current and not alternating current. So they were able to drop the inverter. They didn't have to utilize those full CCFLs as well as the housings to keep them. They were able to put everything into a panel of LEDs in the background, creating better ability for contrast in the images. Now, also LEDs utilize less mercury because CCFLs, much like the cathode ray tubes, have mercury inside of them. That's why it's dangerous if you actually break one of those large tube fluorescent bulbs. Mercury, no good for us. So it made it a lot more environmentally friendly for that particular case, and LEDs last significantly longer than a CCFL bulb itself. Questions with regards to that? So LCD, CCFL backlight, liquid crystal display. LED, same thing. They just remove the CCL and put an LED backlight panel behind it. Yes, Luis.
So what I remember, correct me if I'm wrong, monitors use LEDs and a fluorescent bulb for the backlight, right?
LCDs use a compact fluorescent bulb behind it for light. Now, if it is marketed as an LED monitor, that is where they're going to be still using LCD screens, but they have an LED backlight rather than a CCFL backlight. So they were smaller, lighter, friendlier for the environment. They consumed less power. Overall, it was a win-win. Questions so far? All right. Now, fluorescent versus LED. Basic breakdown. Fluorescent's heavier, LED's thinner. Fluorescence cheaper, LED is more expensive. Brightness is lower and contrast is worse on the fluorescent, as well as a shorter lifespan, much higher brightness and a longer lifespan on the LED. Power consumption is lower in the LED, and it also generates a lot less heat as opposed to CCFL. Questions with regards to this? All right. Plasma contains small cells of iodized gases similar to what is used in fluorescent lamps. Creates a very high quality picture, pretty broad viewing angle, and less motion blur. Problems with it is screen burn-in. Anybody ever had that happen? It's no fun, especially if you watch like, say like sports and you have like the ESPN logo down in the bottom right-hand side. If you watch an ESPN all day, you change to another channel and you notice that logo didn't go anywhere. It's still sitting there. So you can burn in images into the screens themselves. Unfortunately, also they have higher energy requirements than an LCD or an LED by itself. And they are dimmer displays. Typically, we're mainly used for TVs, but could also be utilized as monitors as well. They are currently no longer being made because technology has moved beyond it as well. If you're going to use it for a TV, typically with these, you had to operate them in a dark room so that you can actually see the picture. If you had a lot of daylight coming in, you could not see the images very well on the screens because the images were not very bright. Questions so far? All right. OLEDs, organic light emitting diode monitors. This is the most modern iteration of monitors that we currently have. The LED panel itself, or LCD itself, is actually emitting the light by itself, so it does not require a backlight to light up the image from behind. It allows for very thin monitors and or TV screens. It also is allowing us to have curved monitors now, as you are seeing right here down below. This is a big thing in gaming, using the widescreen curved monitors, creating almost a three-dimensional or virtual backdrop for your games. It has a very high contrast ratio, so brighter brights and darker darks. The image quality on these are second to none. I mean, they just have really, really crisp images. So it's a lot more true to life. Currently, the technology is very expensive, but over time, we are starting to see the cost of this technology come down, especially as it is becoming more adopted by the average consumer, and production is getting more efficient. Questions with regards to OLEDs? All right. Projectors. Many of us have probably come across these, being movie theaters or what have you. You can set them up in one of two possible ways. You could have it as a front view where the projector is in the room or the middle of the room with you and throwing that image up on the screen, or you can actually set it up behind the screen itself, and it's essentially throwing the image onto the back of the screen, shining it through, so it inverts the image. So when you're seeing it from your end, it appears correct, and you don't have to have the projector in the room with you as well. It allows you to have the room you're in be a little bit brighter, but you're still having to shine it through, and you need to have the space behind the screen in order to make this happen. Brightness, how bright the image is in and of itself on a projector, is measured in what is called lumens. Quick, useless trivia. Who can tell me what a single lumen is? Where does that measurement come from? And you see flashlights where they have 400 lumens, 800 lumens, 1000 lumens. What is a single lumen? I'll give you a hint. It's very old. What did we use before light bulbs?
Like a lantern?
Getting there.
Candle.
Candles. So a single lumen is the light produced by a single candle. That is where that measurement term comes from. So we determine the brightness of anything, be it a TV, a flashlight, or what have you, based off of that measuring stick. So lumens. Now, a projector, the throw of a projector is the size of the image at a certain distance. So all projectors have a recommended minimum and maximum throw, where you cannot have the image too close or it'll be distorted and not very large, or too far and the image becomes extremely blurry and you're unable to distinguish it. So there is a minimum or maximum distance based on the screen size you are operating with, and that is called the throw. Now, inside the projectors themselves, they utilize very high powered lamps. Anybody who's ever owned a projector and worked on one of these things, these lamps are extremely expensive. We're talking about more than half the cost of the device themselves, and they operate off of a projected amount of hours that they will be functional before the lamp themselves will burn out, and you have to replace these. Something you want to definitely take care of. Do not let these lamps overheat, because again, they are very expensive to replace. Questions so far with that? All right. Monitor settings.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
We got it working, Marvin.
Well, okay, we'll talk about it. Way to go.
Were you missing?
Yeah, he was in Zoom jail. We
Zoom
got him out.
jail?
We got posted bail.
All right. All right, so monitor settings you need to be aware of. One is the brightness. This is determined, by the monitor's backlight of itself, and it is measured in nits. Displays vary from 100 nits on the low end to 1000 nits on the very high end. It is the amount of brightness that monitor will put out in and of itself. The next two are the ones that people tend to become confused with the most, and that is the difference between the response rate and the refresh rate. Response rate is how long it takes a single pixel on the matrix of the LCD to go from black, pure black, all the way to white and all the way to black again. So that is called the response rate. The lower that response rate is, the better. And this is measured in milliseconds. So it's how fast those pixels can react, going from black all the way to white and then all the way back to black. The refresh rate is how often the screen can change and fully update the image on the screen completely per second. For most computing, 60 hertz is fine. For gaming, watching sports, general television, 60 hertz is extremely insufficient. You're going to get a large amount of blur. So, but for just general office use, 60 hertz is perfectly fine. Contrast ratio, this happens to be the difference between the darkest points and the lightest spots on the monitor that it can display at any given time. Remember, we were talking about early iterations of LCDs. Your blacks tended to be very gray just because of the backlight shining from behind it, lit up those dark areas so that you didn't get really sharp contrast at that point. Typically considered to be a good contrast ratio would be a 450 to 1. Questions so far? All right. Monitor settings. Resolution is the number of horizontal and vertical pixels that can be displayed at any given time. This particular breakdown here, I'm not going to read it all out for you. I definitely recommend going over it a little bit, especially understanding at which point it is considered to be HD. There were bridging technologies that were somewhere in between VGA and HD in and of itself, like the SXGA. So I would recommend just kind of perusing this and being somewhat familiar with it with regards to the exam and just understanding what you're looking at when you are dealing with different monitors as well. Questions with regards to that?
It's kind of neat to like go to your settings on your computer and comparing it to what numbers are here and figuring out where your computer lies too. So I would do that, right click personal settings and see where your native resolution, where your computer wants to be. So that's kind of neat. You got a 2-minute warning too, Kelly.
I got it. I prefer to operate off of old CRTs. I like seeing everybody in 8-bit Nintendo Classic. All right. All right, monitor settings, aspect ratio. That is the ratio between your horizontal and your vertical. And if this is not set properly, your images can look stretched or squished if this is not properly set up on your particular monitors. Native resolution, whenever you're setting it up, native resolution is the most efficient resolution that the monitor you have can effectively display. There is a circuit board on that monitor that is going to communicate with the computer, and they will negotiate which is the best. And oftentimes it will be set to native when you go in and look at your display settings, unless somebody has gone in behind you and changed those settings. But the most effective ratio for whatever monitor you are using is the native resolution. That is the most efficient for that display. All right. Multiple displays. How many here are operating off of dual monitors? 1, 2. All right. As we're talking about multiple displays, they can be utilized in at least 2 different ways. We can have a mirrored desktop, where basically you have the same thing shared on 2 different display devices. This is helpful in presentations and things like that, where you can be working off a small laptop but be mirroring your same display to a projector, sharing that for everyone else. The other way we can utilize this, which gives us greater real estate to apply even more applications in Windows 2 if we need multiple screens to operate from, would be the extending of our desktop. So an extended desktop versus a mirrored desktop. This is really nice if you're having to operate in multiple applications at the same time. I do vividly remember the evolution going through in transportation, first starting out with a single screen and that being more than sufficient, and thinking that dual screen was an extravagance. Once I got a dual screen and I was able to operate in at least 2 to 3 programs at the same time, I thought that was just awesome and it couldn't get any better. And then I got the 3rd screen, and then I started going, you know what, the way this is going, do they make 6 screen rigs? So sitting there thinking about how extreme can it get? Well, Marvin and I have a gentleman who started out as a TA around the same time we were, and he actually built himself a 6-monitor rig. He is a TA for the junior web development now, or he is a lead instructor for junior web development at this point. But yeah, he went from a 3-monitor setup to building it out to a 6-monitor setup during the time that we first started teaching together. So he loves it. He thinks it's great. At a certain point, though, I start to wonder about, do you have too much real estate? But then I guess it depends on how things evolve over time. There are times when I wish for 4 screens and I'm operating off of 3. So I can definitely appreciate it at times. All right. Monitor settings. One way you can increase security to prevent things like shoulder surfing. You can utilize the privacy filter. This is a nice little feature. You have to be directly in front of it. But if you are slightly off center, you can't read or see what's on the screen. So it is very good as a security feature for deterring things like shoulder surfing. All right. Anti-glare. If you work in an office with a lot of windows and you happen to have the way your desk is situated, your back is to the window. I was in that situation. It was somewhere between like 8 and 10 a.m. in the morning. I had direct line of sight of the sun coming into my monitor, and it made it near impossible for me to read almost anything. So anti-glare became my best friend, especially around that time, so that I wasn't getting a really bright glare in my eyes from the sun behind me, and still allowed me to function as well. Questions with regards to the difference between these two? All right. Training wheels off. Time for a quick quiz.
Can you go back to the last slide for just a second of the screens? Thank you.
Yes, we can go back there for a second. 1001.
Thanks.
No problem. Let me know when you're ready.
I got it.
All right. Deal. Go ahead, stop here for a second, give everyone an opportunity to work through that one really quick. Can't take too much time on it. Have to keep moving. We still have one more presentation for the day. Pause recording. All right. So along with this particular one, we're not going to read all of it, but at least have a understanding, especially at major breaking points, like when HD actually kicks in. So like, what is the lowest resolution that can actually be called HD? What were the aspect ratios associated with those? And then moving all up into 4K and Ultra HD and stuff like that as we move along. So you don't need to memorize the whole chart. Just be aware of what these numbers mean, where they come from, and then the major breaking points like the lowest level of HD, standard HD, and when does 4K kick in. That all has to do with your pixel ratios. All right, ports and connectors. I know everyone here was thoroughly excited when we got done with ports and connectors in the last technical session, thinking and hoping that that was the end of it, but no, we have more. Yet more ports and connectors to go over. We got to deal with our VGAs, our DVIs, HDMI, DisplayPort, Thunderbolt, composite, component. Those are the two people tend to mix up quite frequently, as composite and component. S-video, coaxial for cable TV, as well as adapters and converters. Moving into it. All right. Oldest one on the table for the most part, we have VGA, also called DB15. This is analog video, transmit signals in RGB or red, green, and blue. All colors that come out are a combination of those three. That was all that they had available. One of the oldest ports, typically seen in blue, with the connector as well as the port. And as we stated, DB15. Up next, we have the DVI, which is a bridging technology. Yep, go ahead, Evan.
Okay, so on the test, are they gonna have either the DB15 and HD15 on the test as answers?
HD15 likely will not be seen, just DB.
Okay.
So it's typically called a VGA or a DV15. That's the two primaries that you'll see. So, all right, DVI or digital video visual interface, bridging technology in between analog and digital. So, analog only. Over here, you can kind of see it down here where it's not thoroughly pinned out. I'm not sure. Can you guys see where my mouse is pointing? Thumbs up or no? You see my mouse moving around? Okay. So down here, it's not thoroughly pinned out. This kind of gives you that pin count up here. What is in there? And so it'll be DVI/A. That's analog. And so it's analog only. That's all it does. It is possible you will see this pin count, so it is one to kind of pay attention to. Then we will jump all the way over to digital only, which is DVI-D, which only has the flat bar off to the left here and then has all pins taken care of in dual link. Signal link has a big gap in the middle, but digital only has that flat bar only in it. All the others have the bar and the 4 pins surrounding it. So that would be your digital for single and dual link. Now we get into the bridging technology right here, which is the DVI-I, which can be digital or analog. Now, important note. You can use this for a digital, like from a digital to a digital connection, or from an analog to an analog connection. This is not a converter. It will not change a signal from a digital signal to an analog signal. It is not a converter. Just that this cable can be used with both technologies. So it does not convert the signal, but it can be used for either signal. The DVI-A can only be used for analog. The DVI-D can only be used for digital. DVI-I could be used for either, but does not convert. Does that make sense? Any questions with regards to DVI?
I'd also like to add, Kelly, how I remembered it when I was going through the cohort. I remember DVI-I as having 2 eyes above the line, whereas DVI-D is just the line. So that's how you can separate between D and I. And then for A, you just know that it looks kind of wonky on the squares.
Okay. Everybody has their little tips and tricks. Some work for you, some do not. You know, I was not as creative as Marvin and Avery in trying to figure out ways to remember certain things. I used a different approach. Marvin historically is known for just, especially you'll get to understand that a little better when you get to ports. He has like little tips and tricks for almost every port to remember it for himself. Can I repeat which part? Oh, Avery? Yep, you got it. Never mind.
I'll put it in the chat.
Beautiful. And he's talking about the connection piece over to the left of the pins. So initially when we would do dual monitor setups, you would typically have one on VGA and one on DVI. So because towers tended to have both those connectors for quite some time, even to this day, behind the on the back of the tower. So you could hook up one monitor to the VGA, one to the DVI, and then you just would determine which one was monitor 1 and which one was monitor 2 from that point. So forward. HDMI. Anybody who has hooked up a modern television setup is very familiar with this particular technology. It was pretty revolutionary in the fact that it transmitted both digital video and audio at the same time. It was designed primarily to be used by home theater entertainment, but it was quickly adopted by offices because it allowed for efficient use of cables. And best known is the Type A 19 pin, which is this one over here on the left, right here. That's this one. But there is also the mini HDMI here, also a 19 pin connector. It looks just like its big brother, but slightly smaller, probably about half the size. Now, small mobile devices can use the smaller 19 pin HDMI mini, and the maximum length of the cable like extremely depends on the quality of the cable. Now, we had a student in our first class who her husband swore up and down that the reason they were, the cable quality and type didn't matter at all. If you just bought the cheaper cable, that's what made it work. And they're just trying to go for more money, which is why they just say it is a gold plated, cable that can do, all these wonderful things and the throughput. So he would only buy the cheapest possible cable he could find to set up their entertainment system, and then was always complaining that they never got actual true HD. Halfway through the course, she comes to realize that it actually, the quality of the cable plays a big role in the quality of the output you're going to receive. And they had like the 4K DVD player, they had the 4K television, and they were getting almost SD quality out of it. After she realized this, they went out and bought brand new cables, and it was life-changing because everything was operating now at full capacity. They did not have the bottleneck of the cables standing in their way. And she was initially quite upset about this because they had a whole box full of HDMI cables, but they were all the cheap ones that actually did not provide high definition video. So,
I have several stories about that, but once again, cables and accessories were profit boosters. So of course we sent you to get the monster cables. They were more expensive, but we had like a little demo to show you what a regular cable versus a monster cable and quality wise. You can't argue with it, so you can see it. They always said that we played around with the bad cable to make it look worse, but no, it was just the cable.
So yes, the quality does matter. Absolutely does. All right, next. This is one that is rising in popularity. Initially, I would only see it on Dells, but it started spreading to more and more monitors and computers as well, which is the display port. It was designed to replace the DVI as the next level of upgrade, and it could transmit digital video as well as audio data at the same time, similarly to the HDMI. Now, they do have a smaller version of it that they commonly use in laptops. Maximum length for DisplayPort cables is roughly about 15 meters, or about 45 feet, though unless you're using projectors or something like that, it's very rare you will actually hit that length of the cable. Any questions with regards to DisplayPort? If you're looking at a DisplayPort head on, please make note. One side is flat, it comes over, up, and it has an angle, and then it comes over. So that would be how you would distinguish it. It is easy if you're in a hurry to confuse both the port and the cable for an HDMI cable. They do look very similar if you don't catch the fact that one of those sides is flat versus the angle like the HDMI. Questions so far with that?
Nice drawing, Kelly. You're
I
getting better.
know, man. I'm getting better every cohort. Man, you guys should have seen me on cohort 1.
Yeah, it was awful.
I know.
You
So I
didn't
say,
even
like,
need the digitizer.
I know, right? Often say there are impressionist painters out there. I am an impressionist writer. It's very, very blurry and messed up if you look at it close, but if you back out really far, it almost looks like letters. So next we have the Thunderbolt, to be confused with your lightning cable.
Or storm.
Yeah, or storm. It combines together PCIe Express and display port into a single serial signal. Very powerful technology on the rise right now. Yes, it was originally a proprietary thing for Apple, although I do believe they are migrating it into the PC world as well. Can transmit video and or data with no problem. Maximum length of that cable is only about 9 feet, 3 meters, but it can achieve up to 20 gigabits per second, which is blazing fast for data transmission. And it utilizes the same connector as a mini display port. Thunderbolt 3 uses a USB Type-C and can reach up to 40 gigabits per second, typically in use by Apple products, the MacBook Pro, Air, and MacBook. Questions so far with Thunderbolt? All right. Now we're going old school. Composite video, also called an RGB port, mixes the red and green and blue together in the same signal. Usually inputted in the yellow, and then the red and white were for left and right audio. I think Mark was the one who picked up on this one earlier. There were the PS2 connector, looks very similar to the S video port, which is right here.
Yeah.
And then there is an RF adapter so that you can run a coax into it if you so chose. But composite video was the yellow, red, and white, where yellow was your red, green, and blue in a single signal, and then you had left and right audio. Not to be confused with component video. Component video broke out the red, green, and blue into their individual signals right here, and then they also had the red and white for your left and right audio. Let me look up the I notated. I always do that kind of funny. Bear with me, my internet is massively slow today. So yeah, it's broken out into 5 cables as opposed to 3. So composite 3, yellow, red, and blue. Component 5, red, green, and blue. Split out, and then yellow and red or left and right audio. All right, I don't have to come back to that as soon as it loads. All right, next we have S video, which we talked about here. It is a 4 or 7 pin round port, similar to what you would see for a mouse or keyboard connector. Some older video cameras use this, but very rarely seen nowadays. Some VCR hookups had them. Was not extremely widely adapted. They kind of went from the RCA cables and then moved up to component and then continued to go on beyond that. All right, questions so far with S video? Next, coaxial cable. We will deal with coaxial quite a lot in this course. If you go into Network Plus, you will learn way more about coaxial than you will ever think possible. Coax comes down to two very specific types of connectors. Yes, you do need to know them. You have first this one right here with the threaded end, and this is called your F-type connector. F as in Frank or Foxtrot. So F-type connector allows you to thread it on like a screw, and it holds it very, very securely. Most times, this is what you will see in typical home cable systems in places where you are not going to be moving these cables very much. It's typically you're putting it in place and it's going to be there for a very long time. Now, with regards to networking, like if you're dealing in an office environment and you're using coax for your network, which they did use for quite some time, especially in bus networks, you would use this type of connector here. These two pieces would actually marry together. They have a little, see these little barbs sticking off right here and right here. They would go in and twist, and that would lock it in place. This particular type of connector is called a BNC, or bayonet Neil Councilman. You don't necessarily need to know bayonet Neil Councilman, but just remember it's BNC, and that is the twist and lock that you would typically see for network connections with regards to coaxial cable. Any questions with regards to that? BNC versus F-type. Yes, Luis.
Yeah, the first one. You said it. I forgot the first one. So you said it starts with an F. I forgot the name, so I can write it down.
Very close. F-type connector. So the letter F and then type. That's the type. It's an F connector. So you were actually dead on. All right. Yes, Evan.
Are B and C still used today?
Yes. Yes, they are.
Okay.
Not necessarily in a network setting in an office, but they may use them in setting up some home networks, but there are cases in offices where they will use them as well. But so yes, they are still using BNC connectors. They also use a BNC type connector for some fiber optics as well.
Cable.
So, and that is predominantly for coaxial cable. All right. All right, adapters and converters. Can somebody tell me in their mind what is the difference between an adapter and a converter?
Adapter connects to different devices, and a converter changes the AC to DC, or wait, no,
Changes
I don't
this.
know.
No, you were right on it. I mean, I'm doing, you know, you're doing great. Mark, you want to add to that? But TK, you were right on it.
A converter changes the signal type so that it's to match where it's going to, what you need. So if you need digital and you have an analog plug, it'll up convert the analog to digital.
Perfect. Very well. Very good. I like that. So yes, an adapter changes the form factor of that connector from one type of connector to another. So like from a USB to that PS2 connector. So it just changes the shape and size of that connector so that it'll work with what you have available. The converter itself changes the signal to what you may need. I mean, it could be changing something from coaxial to fiber optic. It could be changing something from analog to digital. It is changing the type of signal you are using so that it can be put into a form that can be utilized by whatever system you are using at that time. And there are a wide variety of them. There are some listed here: HDMI to DVI, BNC, or excuse me, DB15 VGAs, to DVI. That's another real common one you'll see on a regular basis. So just understand the difference between an adapter and a converter. Do you have your hand up, Mark, or are you just kind of hanging out? Got it. All right. Moving right along, we are now at video cards, also called graphics adapters or display cards. Most motherboards today have some form of video processor already integrated in with the motherboard itself. Though if you're going to be doing some high-end gaming or CAD programming or 3D animation or rendering or something like that, those graphics cards will not be sufficient, the ones that are already built in. So you're gonna need to upgrade those. So you would improve upon that stuff using video graphics cards that you would add onto your system through the expansion slots. They typically would, attach to the AGP or the PCIe, though modern ones almost exclusively go into PCIe. Very rarely will they use the AGP at this point. Need a PCI 16 for the most part, and a lot of times they would need additional power. So you would need a port available on your power supply to be able to supply the power to that graphics card as well. The main big name graphics card manufacturers are NVIDIA and ATI Radeon. Those are the two big players at this point in time. Questions so far? All right, continuing on, here is a look. I believe we saw this one here not too long ago. Another look at a video card, and if you look at it pretty closely, it looks quite similar to a motherboard that we would normally use inside our computers. We have our GPU, which would be similar to our CPU right here under this heatsink and cooling fan, just like we would in a motherboard. We have RAM attached, we have capacitors. This would go into our PCI 16 slot through this adapter or connector right here. We can see the fun heat sinks on here for our North Bridge essentially, and RAM that is attached. And then these are quickly identifiable. I know this is an older video card. Modern ones, are fully enclosed, but this one gives kind of a peek behind the curtain. But this one will show us our DVI, our S-Video, and our VGAs to let us know that this is a video card. Modern ones may have DisplayPort and HDMI and other more upgraded ports. At this point, you typically would not see VGA or DVI attached. Questions so far with regards to video cards?
Is that an old video card from like the early 90s or something like that?
I'd probably say like the mid noughties, I would say. Mid 2000s. It is an old one, yeah, but it does give us the visual representation we're looking for. So
Luis, I got the same card, man. Chill out. Using
yes.
that right now.
Marvin just moved up to 16-bit last week. He's excited.
Yeah,
man. Pole Position is probably one of his favorite games. He's ready to go.
Very exciting game.
All right. Now, the excitement continues. We have our randomizer here. We can go quick. Humberto, can you please give us number one, sir? What is that?
Come off mute first, Pozo. And also, don't get quiet now. You got it.
We got to move along.
Say it one more time, because we didn't hear you. So you.
I don't know if your microphone, your mic might be muted on your headset.
Yes, I think it's lighting.
Lightning? No,
not quite.
Not quite. I believe a Lightning uses that technology, though. Does it not? The Lightning is a combination of two technologies.
Yes.
So, Luis?
Thunderbolt.
All right. Y'all just like the weather, don't you?
I know, right?
Is it a blizzard?
Can someone identify the letter that's on top of this particular device? What does it look
Hard to
like?
see the connection at the end, the connector.
Put it in chat
HDMI?
if you can make out that letter on the top. Put it in chat for me. Yep, Diaz got it. So D stands for what?
D.
Digital.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good.
It is a digital signal. So
It is
yes,
digital.
it does utilize a digital signal.
Display port.
There we go.
Got it. There we go.
Way to
Display
go.
port. Very good. Very good.
If this was Hangman, you'll still be alive. Okay, you called it before they finished. Display
All right.
port.
Next, number two. Number two. Who's it going to go to? Rapid fire. Evan. It's number two. Down here. Bottom, not up in the middle. So down here. You're talking, Evan. You're on mute, man. I can't hear you.
Oh my God, I can't believe I had to do that. All right. Okay, is that a VGA?
It is not a VGA. It is not a VGA.
Has too many pins.
What's the other name for a VGA?
Oh, DB15.
There you go. There you go. DB15. What does that 15 number mean?
The pins.
Number of pins. Number of pins. There we go. You want to phone a friend there, Evan?
I thought I said it. Y'all didn't hear me?
What'd you say?
I said the pin, number of pins.
No, I don't. Well, I'm just saying on no, but we still got to name the cable. So what are we looking at?
I'm gonna have to phone somebody.
Go for it.
Mark.
What you got, Mark?
I've got DVI-D connector.
DVI-D. Why do you say it's a DVI-D?
From what I can see, we've got a good big block of pins there.
Mhm.
It's not broken up, which would make it a DVI A.
Okay.
Okay, and then over to the left, I see a string of pins together in one row, and it doesn't look like an I, like a capital I turned sideways, which would be the DVI-I. So
Okay.
that's the DVI-D.
Bonus points there, Mark. Is that single or dual channel?
That's a dual channel. Oh, no, I'm sorry, single channel.
Hold
It's
on.
this-
You should have
You gotta go with
stuck
your
with your
first line.
instincts.
My fault.
No, it is dual channel. See, if it was single channel, there would actually be a gap in the middle
Yeah.
Crap. Yeah, that's
of the
okay.
pins. So it is a dual channel DVI-D cable.
Noted.
Nice. Very good. Very good, though. All right. Number three. Got here. Ash, can you tell us what number three is, please?
Yeah, is it a HDMI?
Number three up here.
It's not an HDMI.
No, not an HDMI.
Okay.
It does transmit digital sound or digital video and audio though. So it does have that in common with the HDMI.
I would not be upset with anybody if they yelled out, "This is a USB type A connector." It does look like one, but
It does. It
I
does.
would
think
not be
that's what I
upset if somebody
guessed.
say what?
I think during my cohort, I got this one and I said USB.
Hey, it looks like a white USB. Like there's, which
pretty
is not
close.
Thunder.
I'll give you a hint. It is proprietary to Macs, to Apple products.
Oh, it's is it
Combination of two technologies.
lightning? No.
Well, Lightning is that little tiny one that you use to plug into your phone. That's a Lightning, but that also is
Oh.
proprietary to Mac. So what is this?
Thunderbolt.
Thunderbolt.
Yeah.
So what, bonus points, what are the two technologies this combines?
PCIe
PCIe, very good.
and DisplayPort.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Thank you very much. So combination of PCIe and DisplayPort. Apple proprietary Thunderbolt. All right. Moving right along. Number 4. It's the bottom center. John, can you please tell us what that is?
Number 4, yeah?
Yep. Bottom center.
In the center. Some maybe not VGI. It's some DVI cable.
Should trust your instincts, John.
My instincts.
Mm-hmm. This one down here. Give you a hint. Look at the pins. You had it right. You had it right the first
Yeah,
time.
yes.
You called it out right the first time.
Mhm.
What I said first time. VGI, yeah?
VGA. What's the other name for it? So we have VGA. What's the other thing we call it?
DB15, something.
Perfect.
That's
Nice.
it.
Awesome.
Good job.
DB15. Good job. So number 4, DB15. All right, number 5. We got Jimmy.
Yeah, man. Jimmy, what you got for it?
Number 5 is the antenna connector.
Right here?
Forgot the, huh?
Up here? Yeah. What is that?
I forget the name. Is it a TV cable?
Hold
Can
on,
be.
Jimmy, hold on, Kelly. I gotta get in this. Jimmy, you call it a TV cable? You're not doing that, man. We
Is it
too.
a Coke?
Coax. Short for coaxial. So I'm gonna let we gotta build on that. So coaxial cable, but be more
Coaxial.
specific.
Okay.
It's you got people in chat that's giving you the
What type of connector does it use? We know it's coax, but what type of connector is it? There were 2 different kinds we talked about.
BNC.
BNC connector for coaxial. Remember, as we move along through this, we no longer accept thingamajigger, whatchamacallit, who's what's it. We have to be
Jimmy
very
said
specific
TVK.
in our language.
It was
I
labeled
like
as
it,
such
man.
in the previous slide.
I
It's
like
not me,
that.
it's not.
All right, we got there though. Good deal. All right, next we have Mark for the last number 6. What is that, sir?
I'm gonna go ahead and say it's an HDMI cable.
Okay.
It doesn't look like it's a mini. It looks like it's a little big to be a mini, so I'll go with
Okay.
HDMI.
All right, what brand is it? I'm just playing with you, seriously.
Yeah, you won't know that.
All right. So very good, very good. Move right along here. All right, troubleshooting common monitor issues that you'll come across. Ghosting, streaking, fuzzy vertical edges, monitor not showing any red, bad pixels, stuck pixels, flickering images, dim images, and hissing noise. If you see blue smoke come out of the top of it, it's done. All right. Ghosting, streaking, and or fuzzy vertical edges. Check your cables. Most likely that is where the problem is occurring, is the transmission of that image to your screen or display device. If that does not fix the issue once you have checked the cable, if you tried another cable and you're still getting that same problem, then it is likely residing in your video card, and it could be that your card is just not seated properly. So that could cause the issue. Can somebody tell me what ghosting is? Not in the social sense, but in the IT sense.
You end up with figures on the screen. They're not they look like they're see-through.
Yeah, they're kind of
they don't
offset.
really- yeah,
like
offset,
there's a
right.
ghost image.
Right.
So that is what ghosting is. All right, bad pixels on an LCD monitor under warranty. Change the monitor if it's under warranty. There is another method to fix bad pixels, or to, if you get a call on bad pixels. So a dead pixel is one that never lights up, so it just remains black the whole time. You have a stuck pixel, which is stuck pixel, which is stuck on a certain color. It could be red, it could be blue, it could be green, what have you, but it just doesn't change no matter what happens. And then you have a lit pixel, which is pure white. No matter what happens, even if full screen goes black, it's still lit pure white. So one method they have is to change out the monitor. What is the other method? It's not under warranty anymore. So what is the other method for it if you have bad pixels in your monitor?
Change the resolution.
Change resolution? I don't think that will help the pixels function, but I like where you're going with it. Anybody else? Change the wire. We change the wire, stays the same. Unfortunately, the pixels aren't going. All right, this is the tough love repair. So if it's not under warranty and there aren't a whole lot of them that are bad, the answer is deal with it. So if you're not doing 3D rendering or high def video or any of that stuff, you can either change the monitor or you deal with it. That's basically your two options when it comes to stuck, dead, or lit pixels. If it's just a general office work where you're not, the clarity and crispness and completeness of the image isn't really, a big deal. If it's not overwhelming how many pixels they are, you might just say, hey, deal with it until next quarter when our budget recycles, and then we can buy you a new monitor. If it starts to get worse, then we'll deal with it directly, but change it out or deal with it. All right, flickering image. So typically a inexpensive panel with too much light bleed from the backlight, or it's a dying CCFL. If you've ever been in an office or school or a store, when the overhead lights start to die, you start getting that humming noise, and then they start flickering and stuff like that. That's signs that these bulbs are coming to the end of their life and they need to be changed. Same exact thing with regards to a CCFL backlight and a LCD monitor. Dim image, especially if it's only on the top half or bottom half or something along those lines, that also points you to your backlight system. If it is just using a grid method, it could be just one sector is always dark. It means that there is a problem with the backlight itself is not lighting up. Understand, LEDs don't flicker. They are either fully on or fully off. That's it. LEDs do not flicker. If it flickers, that's CCFL. If it makes a hissing noise, it's very distinct. If you hear it, you remember it. If it makes a hissing noise, it means the inverter has gone bad in the monitor itself and it needs to be changed out. Questions so far? All right. We have another quiz. During the course of this particular presentation, we should now be able to describe different types of displays and their respective characteristics like CRT, LCD, OLED, LED, plasma, projector. Describe the purposes of projectors, whether it be front facing, rear facing. We know what the throw is now. The brightness, how the brightness is measured. It's measured in lumens. Describe the different settings of monitors and how to adapt them. Identify video ports and connectors that are utilized to connect these monitors, and then talk about common problems that come up specifically with monitors themselves. Any questions with regards to display devices? All right.